Hi, welcome. In this video, I want to focus in on the issue of service dog training. And I'm going to be using a video put out by Canine Tay as a reference point when it comes to talking about the issues happening, not just in the dog training world in general, but as it relates to service dog training. And again, I talk about this issue about bribery. I talk about dogs that are attached to people, connected to people, but in a possessive way. Okay, this is where, again, when you get into this issue about service dog training, why do so many dogs are with with the owner, with the handler, but when it comes to performing a specific task, this is where things start to fall apart. And again, this gets into this issue about changing the perceptions of dogs the right way, generating the right type of focus so that coming out on the other side of a process, you end up with a reliable, consistent a dog that is going to truly meet your needs pertaining to both a physical needs as well as emotional needs such as PTSD. Now, this is where, again, I do service dog training. This is where I would encourage you to check out my service dog training videos to help to understand, what represents a process. You'll see how I go through a sequence. And again, I show the whole 4-month process, right from changing the perceptions of dogs the right way, generating the right type of focus, and then leading into task-specific responses. Okay, this is where I talk about, when you start to motivate, okay, a response. Understand there's a time and place once the relationship has been cleaned up. Okay, once dog's perceptions change the right way, then you can start to get into certain task-specific responses. But again, this is where the inherent problem is within the dog training community by way of those who approach training as a learning-based exercise, and instead of again bringing those two core ingredients, into a process at the beginning by way of influence and control, they immediately start using treats. They start to motivate dogs to respond, and the problem with that is the fact that typically what happens is dogs that are already holding a level of control in the relationship, they will respond, okay, within the training environment, and it'll appear as though things are coming together a certain way, but then coming on the other side, only to discover that things haven't really come together the right way at all, and everything starts to fall to pieces. And you have dogs that cannot perform specific tasks, especially in get into a very distracting area, because the point of everything is to say that in terms of the jumping in point, not bringing those two core ingredients in, understanding that you're dealing with a relationship problem with dogs that have already gained a level of control. And so, again, you end up with a bad result. So, again, understand it's really important to understand what represents training, what represents a process. And so we talk about trainers who, again, get into this whole thing about bribing dogs, because that's what happens. Because people ask, well, when does bribery become bribery? Well, bribery becomes bribery when you fail to consider the current state of the relationship. Okay, you fail to consider both, the role of the dog owner as it relates to dogs as social animals. Talk about, the issue about, the perceptions of dogs. Just like, again, that's why I keep talking about the parenting example so often, in terms of, helping people understand the problems here when it comes to both, training in a general sense. It's your typical dog that is in need of help in terms of certain behavioral issues. But also, when you get into this whole issue about service dog training, it's the same thing. It's the same type of jumping in point where you have to understand it's all about understand at the relationship side of things, that there's two core ingredients, influence and control. They have to be part of the equation, okay, in terms of changing perception of dogs the right way. Now, this is where we get this whole thing about, again, so much confusion out there. And this is an example of that by way of this trainer, Canine Tay. You'll see a lot of these individuals are playing off certain optics, okay, playing off the confusion to promote a agenda, okay. And this gets into this whole, side of things where people end up with a bad result because there's a complete failure to understand, what represents training. And this goes into, again, I encourage you to watch my series Flipping the Script, where I go into, both these groups, balanced and force-free, how they approach training as a learning-based exercise, and their jumping in point with just motivating dogs to respond right away, well, considering how that would set up a counterfeit picture, okay, within the framework of, superficial response for so many. Okay, so this is where if you watch, again, if you watch my service dog training process, it's a great process to kind of watch because I show the whole thing. Because again, when you watch a lot of my videos at a intervention level, okay, with dogs such aggressive dogs, other dogs, it's going to come off a certain way because, you're going to see me, my jumping in point is in the middle of a relationship problem. Okay, so it has to be very intentional with how I'm interacting with dogs. It's a power play, so you're not going to see me motivating responses, okay, certain ways because I'm in the midst of a relationship problem. But a great example is saying, okay, when does Dale actually start to motivate dogs to respond? When does it look, positive? Well, you see the good things start to happen in terms of service dog training, because you see that process, how it's playing out from the beginning point in terms of a intervention, but then it transitions into motivating dogs to respond. Okay, so again, the service dog training is a good example of kind of seeing the whole thing. So just understand, but here the problem is with these trainers, you're not seeing, they don't approach it as a intervention. And so it right from the beginning, it looks super positive, right? Because they're using the treats. But here's the problem. It looks super positive. These dogs are moving around. It looks like things are coming together, but they're really not. Okay, so if you ever wonder why it is that so many dogs are out there, connected to individuals, but in a possessive way. Okay, so understand that, and this is where you get into this, the specifics of, if you ever wonder why it is that all these dogs can't perform certain, specific, tasks, such as say picking up an object off the floor without bribery, okay, without, we'll talk about that as well, but why it is because that requires that level of focus I'm talking about, that type of pinhead focus. And that can only be generated by way of those core ingredients coming into a process to align the perceptions of a dog. And so again, this is where you get in this whole thing with a lot of dogs out there, you see it, that are with people, right? But they're not in right relationship with these dogs, okay? It's a mess. Okay, so the service dog training industry is a mess, but it plays into this whole issue about, trainers who are bribing these dogs. But here's an example here of a trainer, again, Canine Tay, that again, they have a lot to say on social media, trying to come up against those who don't subscribe to this bribery-based ideology. But these are the same individuals that, again, go and do a proper audit. Okay, you're going to see the inherent problems that are part of this. Dogs, again, that are not, able to, perform certain task-specific responses. That's because I understand that that's where you're going to see it. Okay, that's where things break down. Because again, talk about the relational glue that holds everything together. It comes to a process that takes a path of a intentional interaction-based method. Okay, interaction-based means it is a type of a power play, but dog understands the intent. Okay, just again, talk about the language of the method, how it comes together the right way. So here I'm going to play some of this video. Now people will complain about me doing a lot of talking on my videos and not, but here's the point of everything, is it makes no sense to do something unless you understand why you're doing it. Okay, so much as it's just like people jumping in, using treats, these dogs are moving around, and there's nothing in terms of, okay, what's actually going on here? Can you trust these responses? And this is my thing. I say, let's talk about this. Okay, I mean, let's talk about the failure side of this. Let's talk about the collateral damage of this ideology. Let's talk about all of it. because that's the thing, it's a lack of information as to what's really happening here. And I talk about that. That's why I do so much talking to help people, to encourage people to apply critical thinking. You got to apply critical thinking here. So here you got canine tagging. I play some of this video again as a reference point, frame of reference. You're going to hear going on, like trying to, come up against, anyone that, that would challenge this, bribery-based idea of things. But again, there's a reason why the service dog training industry gets a bad rap. Okay, you see lots of dogs out there with people all over the place, grocery stores, and you're looking at saying, what the heck? There's something wrong. These dogs, because there's no standard. But the whole dog training industry doesn't represent a real standard because, the majority of trainers are marketing and align with this inherently problematic idea by way of approaching training as a learning-based exercise. So when you get this level where we're at, this is going to be a tremendous, tremendous problem. So again, play some of this video, stop along the way to respond to some of the talking points being put out.
How's it going, Critter Family? I hope you all are doing well. Today we're going over...
I'll start right away because, again, just a point. Here's Zach George, and just pay attention. There's a way to kind of recognize you're dealing with an ideology is when you hear trainers that can't even, use certain language, certain words. I talk about being a dog, owner. Owner means what? Owner means, control. So you hear Zach George, you hear other trainers talk about dog guardian. Okay, so understand when you hear certain words brought up, what you're dealing with. Okay, you're dealing with a permissive, bribery-based ideology. There's certain words that are red flags. Just pay attention to that in the dog training world.
Over the subject of service dogs and how so many are used and abused in the name of training.
Again, there's that word abuse. Okay, I understand that's a loosey-goosey word put out by many trainers, even balanced dog trainers. So understand certain words are thrown around in the dog training community, and no proper, context. Okay, there's no standard. There's no alignment to what language even means, because understand everything's superficial. It's all appearance based. So I understand when you hear this is why certain situations, like I talk about the bonker example with Jeff Gelman, the bonker situation. Just consider the amount of balanced dog trainers that piled on to that situation to try to cancel Gelman, just like these force-free trainers. And that should cause you to pause for a sec, say, what is going on here? Now, don't get me wrong, I talk about the Gelman situation. It's not about defending Gelman that way at all. Okay, it's to say these are situations that are happening in the dog training world. There's a reason for the confusion. So my Flipping the Script series, again, I encourage you to go watch it. I go through all these situations and break all these situations down to help encourage people as individuals to step back from all this, to say, okay, what's really going on here? What represents a process? Why all these things happening? Why all the divisiveness you're seeing in these situations over and over and over again? Okay, there's a reason for that.
As well as so many are, the term is used and abused because so many people have fake service animals. So today we're just going to be talking
fake service animals. Okay, that's the hypocrisy of all this. The fake service animals are coming by way of this ideology
about the training and what goes on with the expectation of true dogs of service, service dogs. So I have this picture up here. This, I believe, is a service dog in training from, I don't know how long ago this was, but this picture is very, very common among a lot of dogs in training because people don't know how to train dogs.
So here we go. Stop here. So right here, Canine Tay just puts up this picture because think about what I'm saying. Everything's based on appearances. There's no depth at all. Okay, by way of this permissive bribery-based ideology. It's all about just, trust appearances. Let's pull out some treats. When everything falls to pieces, I'll blame the dog. Okay, understand that this is where we're at. And so this plays off of people's emotions as well, because once you tie your emotions into this stuff this way and line up through this bribery-based ideology, then it's almost like these trainers already know they have the home field advantage when things don't line up anyway. When you have a dog that's possessive and can't perform tasks, it's like, well, just let's just ignore that. You're okay. The dog is whatever. This is kind of like the standard. Okay, this is like just try to excuse everything away because they know that they can do that. And so when they pop up an image like this, what do you think she's going to start saying? Right? Dog has a remote collar on. The dog has a prong collar on, right? It's like right away because it's all about trying to come up against, certain tools without any depth, without connecting dots properly. It's all about just appearances. So, because understand this ideology is totally based on bribery. Okay, it's not about influence and control coming into a process. So right away, the imagery of this is to try to invoke, try to incite, try to inflame the emotions of people. Say, oh, how terrible! Like this, service dog train. Look at all the abuse going on here. It's ridiculous. Okay, so when I look at, okay, I understand that, and I talk about certain tools, how they align properly by way of a intentional interaction based method. Okay, I'll talk about tools a certain way. Okay, I just don't look at a prong call and say, look, that tool looks like terrible. It's got prongs on it. It must be pinching the dog's neck, and you see all this foolishness in the dog training world because it's all superficial. So there's no, even how tools are used. I talk about the problem even through balanced dog training. I encourage you to watch the series I have on my part of my member area, the Ivan Balanoff versus Larry Crone, where they have this 2-hour discussion, and they're talking about the remote collar, but even by way of these two trainers, it's a debate. It's a very contentious type of discussion because that's the point, all the confusion. So I use that interview to talk through everything, right? To go through everything, say, okay, here's the problem that's inherent to, those who identify as balance trainers, play-based trainers, okay? Understanding that, the tools themselves, they have to align with a process that makes sense. Okay, understand that everything starts at the beginning. It's all about the foundation as to what a process is. If the foundation isn't right, then everything that branches off of it or comes off of it is going to be misaligned. Okay, understand that. So it all comes from, so when you talk about canine Tay and force retraining, well, right away isn't going to line up anyway. The optics of that is just superficial, and this is all the blame shifting, but they get away with this. But that's the thing. It's like to do a proper audit. Canine Tay, let's put it this way, Canine Tay would not want me coming into her training arena and assessing her so-called service dogs. Okay, she just wouldn't want me being there because right away I would reveal stuff right away, right from the beginning, in terms of the perceptions of the dog. What's wrong? That's the thing about exposing agenda. So here, again, you have a dog here with remote collar on. Have I used remote collar? Do I use remote collars? Absolutely, as a secondary tool. Okay, but again, the foundation being a intentional interaction based method where influence and control are brought in the right way, and so therefore the tool itself extends in and through the relationship by way of the dog owner, and it makes sense to the dog, and therefore even the role of influence being proactive, being dialed into the relationship, into the dog's state of mind the right way. Therefore, it makes total sense to the dog in terms of, again, when your jumping in point is such that the dog's perceptions need to change. Okay, the proactive nature of influence, change the perception of dogs the right way. Okay, it's all about it's all about how things make sense to the dog. But typically, for me, as a remote call, I wouldn't consider myself that's not my central, pivot point. Okay, it's not a primary tool at all. Okay, I'll use it in some situations, even if I'm helping, especially if I'm helping service dog owners that have certain physical challenges. and they have certain types of dogs, such as you'll see it on my YouTube channel, say is a pit bull, and understand too that when I'm dealing with or I'm helping dog owners, service dog owners, typically sometimes what happens is like quite often happens where they've already had the dog for a year or longer, and these dogs have already gained a level of control in the relationship. I'm dealing with pit bulls, and so I have to reverse things. And so typically, such as a remote collar, a tool may have to come online for to help to augment, the changing perception of the dog, because these dogs are big, they're powerful, and so you have to appreciate the fact that you have to be able to bring a level of control into a process for the owner. So there's nothing wrong. Again, I understand tools are an extension of a process. They're an extension of the relationship. Okay, I understand that's central. But just like here with Canine Tag, if the process ain't right, doesn't matter. Okay, if the process isn't right, I mean, you don't expect any proper context in terms of tools. Okay, you're not going to get that. You're just going to get this, attempt to come up against them, because their whole basis of everything is superficial. It's bribery based. But then, again, come out on the other side of things and start to understand why is it so many service dogs are in a possessive state, why things aren't actually aligned properly.
They force the animal to comply because they need tired of assistance with something. Which, why are doctors using this? We even harp on the medical part of it, because obviously if you need help with something, then that's not my beef. My beef is how we train these animals and force them to be something that they are not, or they cannot do, or not.
So right here, you notice how she's like babbling on here about force, and that's the problem. You understand a lot of these trainers, okay, and pay attention. It's that whole babbling part, because they can't even connect dots. It's about their emotions. Okay, it's just like forcing the dog. But there's nothing to say talk about the current state of the relationship, why the dog owner is, there in the first place in terms of behavioral issues, okay? It's not about relationship that way. Okay, it's totally just permissive, bribery based. They don't even recognize dogs as social animals. You hear a lot of these trainers try to diminish the fact that dogs are pack animals, because anything that challenges them or sets up a problem for them to try to explain themselves, okay, is a problem. So they use certain words certain ways. Here you see force right away. She starts talking about forcing the dog. Go watch the video I did on the conversation back and forth between Victoria Stilwell and Jennifer Arnold. It's the same thing. That type of rhetoric, that type of inflammatory language, right? It's just meant to incite. So I'll stop this part here. Okay, this is part one. I'm going to go through a lot of this. So my encouragement is, if you are considering a service dog, having a service dog to help you, if you're in the middle of, again, training, or if you have a service dog that's been trained through this permissive bribery based idea of things, and there's problems. Okay, that, hey, I go out with my dog and this is a nightmare. This dog won't perform. I would encourage you, don't settle. Okay, don't buy into this. Understand that you can actually, even though you come through it, you can actually get things on track. So again, check with the information on my website. I'm here to help people, but I'm also here to put out information, the right information. Understand there's so much misinformation out there through these bribery-based permissive trainers. But again, don't take my word for it. Just look at the current state of the service dog training industry. Okay, just step out into your local grocery store and you see these dogs and with the vests on, and they're with the people, but good luck getting these dogs to actually perform a task. Some of these dogs are totally out of control. I've gone out myself. I've gone out and just seen dogs like jumping up on people and just all sorts of craziness. It's out of control. And dogs are amazing animals. Understand that when trained the right way, okay, they're worth their weight in gold. Okay, dogs are amazing animals. They can help us in so many ways, but it's really important that it's the right training. Okay, it's about changing perception of dogs the right way so that they're focused on you when you do need help. If you need something, but again, really encourage you to steer clear of this, bribery-based permissive, approach, because again, all it does is sets people up for bad outcomes. Thanks for watching.